What's happening, YouTubers? Victorinox fan here with another video. Today we're gonna do a review on one of my top two probably favorite folding knives. Top two or top three favorite folding knives. The SJ75s by Strider. And this, I'm telling you, is a great example of how you should always keep your options open and don't dismiss things until you try them. Because when I first saw this knife a couple years ago, I was not feeling it. I mean, I didn't hate it, but it looked kind of ugly. I mean, it looked like a bulldog kind of ish inspired Strider, and it just didn't look comfortable. It didn't look practical, and it just goes to show that I didn't know what I was thinking about. Because when I held my buddies, Jay, check out his channel. He's the owner of Guardian Gear, and he sells a lot of cool knives, Striders, Emersons, all that stuff. I'll link him down below. But when I handled his, I was incredibly surprised by the ergonomics, by how well it's sharpened. Blew me away. And that kind of put me on a path to pick up one for myself. And before you know it, this knife ended up becoming my favorite Strider. I like it more than my SNG, and I like it more than my TT, which is in a bag, conveniently, when I'm doing the review on this. Great. We're going to have to do it without it. Now, why do I like it? The reason I really dig this knife is because it fits my uses. It omits quite a few things that we've come to expect from Strider and from more tactical-oriented knives. But what it does go about and what it does achieve is a very utilitarian tool. Still, with the cool Strider flair. And I think that's a very hard balance to strike. Because a lot of times, these very cool knives like Strider and some of the other more military-esque knives, they tend to be very heavy-duty to the point where for a civilian use, you're compromising on function. You are. Something like the SNG Tonto is super thick. It can pry open a door, it looks like it, but it can't cut for shit because it's not designed to be a small utilitarian knife. You have to make a compromise. I think this goes a great way by giving you that same aesthetic, the same, warranty and a good solid build quality, but at the same time giving you a knife that's still functional. That's still good for use, that I don't have to pull out another smaller knife like a Victorinox Cadet or Pioneer and use that instead. So that's like the big core reason why I dig this blade. Some basic specs. It's a thick fucking knife. I don't remember, this titanium's got to be at least 4 or 5 mil thick on its thickest point and maybe 3 mil on its thinnest point. The blade stock is like 3.1, it's 1.125 inches, so like just a hair over 3 millimeters. It's a really broad blade. Really broad blade. Weight is about 4 ounces. It's not a light knife too, but it's on the smaller side, smaller medium-ish side. In fact, it's just, blade is like 3 inches or 2.9 inches. And the handle is like 4 1/4, 4 1/8, one of the two. So just a hair bigger than the small Sebenza. In terms of length, it feels like a much bigger knife. So let's go over some of the details, and I'm going to start from up here and work my way down. So what are we dealing with on the business end of it? You're dealing with an S35 VN blade with a Strider heat treat, and let me tell you, their heat treat is awesome. It kicks ass. Probably around 60 to 62 Rockwell hardness. They're not always very clear on what they heat treat it as, but I'm guessing it's around 60-ish. You know what? I'm ballparking it around 60-ish Rockwell hardness. 3 mm thick, as I've mentioned. You've got some CNC dragon spine decoration, which is really there for aesthetics, and I hated this at first in pictures, but it's kind of grown on me. This knife has grown on me. It's like a Strider and a Spyderco had a weird love child. and you end up getting this like hunchback of or a bulldogish looking knife. The bastard child of two companies, it looks like, but it's all Strider. The blade has been hollow ground, and let me tell you, people say Striders are thick. This is one of my thinnest hollow grinds that I own. In fact, it arguably feels thinner than the thinnest part of my small Sebenza. Funny fact is, their hollow grinds they kind of work in opposite directions. Just a fun point. Oh, come on, focus, you piece. Right. So on the Sebenza, you've got a very thin hollow. Well, the thinnest point is near the base, and it thickens up around here. These hand-ground Striders are the complete opposite. The thinnest point is around here, and up to here, it's really thin, and it cuts beautifully. Back here, however, I won't lie, I wish it was a little bit less of an abrupt, because it definitely thickens up, and the last, I'd say this portion is a lot thicker of a grind. That makes it a little bit harder to sharpen, but also it kind of reduces performance. So the newer ones, I think, are ground a little bit thinner near the back end. This is one of the first production runs, so keep that in mind. It still, however, is a reverse. So you're going to have a thicker edge near the back, and you're going to have a thinner hollow grind near the front. And it is quite lean. So for utilitarian tasks, it does great. I've cut everything. I've cut everything from wood, rope, food, rubber mats. I've broken apart plastic. I mean, when I moved to Connecticut, I opened all of my boxes. I did all the moving stuff with this knife. All of it. And it held up fantastically. It needed a sharpening by the end of it, but it did great. So, at least as good as a deep hollow grind will do. So don't underestimate the blade geometry, or the blade itself. It's fairly impressive and quite uncharacteristic of a Strider. Quite different than the flat grind found in my on my SNG. So don't knock it till you try it. In my opinion, this is probably the most functional Strider, this SJ75, of all four I own. I own 4 Striders. Of all the 4 Striders I own, this is the most functional that I have, which is why it gets carried a lot. Now, let's move on down. You get the, you've got the handle. The handle is very different from what they've done before. It's kind of a bit of a CC handle, but it does something different. It tapers down. There's a definite taper, and the thickness is variable. So you're dealing with an incredibly thick handle up here that's contoured, and as you move down, you're getting a leaner, thinner handle. So there's a lot of complex machining that's going into this. So that ties in with their ergonomics. You've got something that's less neutral than, let's say, a Sebenza, but not as overly aggressive a grip section as, not as overly aggressive as a handle shape as, let's say, the Strider SNG or the Emerson Horseman. It's really got a big 2-finger choil up front, a mild bump in the back, and a mild bump on the bottom here. These have been chamfered, obviously, and contoured. A lot of, like I mentioned, heavy contouring. Even on the titanium side, you can see the CNC mill marks. It gives you a very comfortable grip. The lack of jimping and the lack of heavy texture make it a lot easier to carry barehanded, and on harder cuts, you find that it doesn't give you as big of a hot spot. So it looks strange, but in execution, when you use it, it really works. And the tapering of the handle causes your 2 fingers up front to really get a solid grip on it, because there's a bit of thickness to it. It's not too thin. And the clip on the back helps aid the grip in the back section, and you find that you've got a very solid grip in hammer, in saber. I guess it'll work fine in reverse too, but I'd be cautious about that. One thing you do lose with this design is you lose any real form of choil. You don't have that same secure choil found here, or especially here. So I would exercise a little bit more caution when using this knife. What you do get is you get the same amount of cutting edge as that in a knife that is a lot smaller, but in a knife that still feels bigger than something like a small Sebenza. So that's a very interesting take, and it's a very different feeling knife. And I think that really speaks to the details in design, because I have not seen a lot of knives with these heavy sort of contouring. I mean, none of these knives, even my Timgalian, it uses a consistent stock throughout. So keep that in mind. That's a very unique feature to this knife, and something I don't see that gets mentioned a whole lot, but it makes a huge difference in ergonomics. You've got that same dragon-ish spine-looking jimping on the back. That doesn't do anything. It's really just for mild texture. Doesn't hurt, doesn't get in the way. It's an open 2-screw design. So your big pivot and your back spacer, no, what's it called? The standoff, the back standoff, which is also the pocket clip mount. So it's all held with that. The stop pin is a dual function stop pin, so it holds the blade open and it holds the blade closed. It looks a little on the smaller side, but I've not heard of any issues, so I doubt it's going to pose any. The lockup on this knife is on the later side, but in the months that I've had, it maybe came here and it moved to here pretty quickly and it stayed there. It uses Strider's new lock face design, and it gives you an incredibly solid, no blade play lockup. The titanium, this is something I want you to see. There's a lot of material behind the lock bar interface, and that leaves for a very stiff on my unit. Others are not the same, but a very stiff lock bar, a very strong detent. This knife has a very, very strong detent, and that's good in my books. I think that's more my unit, but I like it. It gives a very solid, secure feeling lockup, and you know there's enough material here that with the clip, I'm not going to hyperextend it. Unlike something like, let's say, the large Sebenza 21, this looks wire EDM cut, not so much milled out. So you've got a much thinner line, and it just gives it a very nice aesthetic look to it. It's a very aesthetically appealing line, thin, not a whole lot of gap. What that does mean is, in normal Strider fashion, you're still not going to get Chris Reeve fit and finish in all the details, which I'm fine with. So you can see the machining marks. It's not been finished inside the lock bar, which is completely unnecessary because it doesn't do anything. I will say though, fit and finish on the SJ75s is great for a Strider. It's actually much better than my older Striders, and I think over the past 2 years, they've made leaps and bounds in their fit and finish. So they're very good. It's still not immaculate, like Chris Reeve wouldn't miss that blasting. Strider doesn't care because it really doesn't impact performance, and it's more with their brand motif. So again, with a Strider, don't expect Timgalian or Chris Reeve level of nitpickiness. It comes with the same fantastic warranty. It comes with all the same fancy things in box, which means it doesn't come with a box. It comes in a Ziploc baggie. So it is still, at its heart, a Strider. But it's a different Strider. And I think that's very commendable for a manufacturer, especially one that's on a smaller scale like Strider, to branch out and try different designs. So, alright, same pocket clip. So, I mean, this is a fantastic EDC knife. I love it. It's one of my top knives. It's one of my top rotation carries. And I don't foresee myself getting rid of it from my rotation anytime soon. It's a completely different take for the company, and it does it well. It's a functional knife with still the Strider aesthetic, the Strider warranty, and the build quality. It feels robust, but it still cuts. On that note, I hope this review was informative for you. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you were able to take something away from it. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good one. See you around.